The new patch is here! My name's Cass, and I'm developing Dark Mart, a top-down ARPG-style game where you battle dark spirits and gather their essence to exchange for powers. It's built with the open-source software game engine Godot, and I'm creating all the assets from scratch myself. I started this project as a submission to a game jam, and I've been continuing to work on it to learn more about game development by building my own game. On this patch, I've been refining the movement, adding new systems, creating more animations, working out the gameplay, and making new music, all while learning how to write code and follow good development practices. So let's talk about some of the new things I worked on during this update. Something that I really wanted to improve was the user experience of the player between gameplay rounds. If you're not familiar with the game, the way it works is the player moves back and forth between two main phases of the game. The action phase, where you run around the map fighting enemies, and the shop phase, where you can spend currency earned from defeating enemies to upgrade your stats and your skills. My first big addition was to create a bare-bones dialogue system. Having a little bit of back and forth between the player and the shopkeeper adds a lot to the experience, in my opinion. For now, it's extremely simple, but in the future, I'm planning to expand upon it some more and introduce more fun ways for the player and the shopkeeper to interact. These portraits, which were created by my friend Aiden, also really improved the look of the game and made me feel a bit more immersed in the story of Dark Mart as well. Next, I wanted to split some of the purchase options into separate categories. There are two currencies in my game, gold and souls. Both are earned by defeating enemies during the battle phase, and I wanted there to be a distinction between what kind of things could be purchased with the different currencies. I wanted gold to be used for more material objects that the player could activate themselves when they want to use them, like potions, while souls are more intended for purchasing stat upgrades or skills that enhance the player's combat abilities. I think it makes more sense that the alchemist would use dark spirit essence to grant the player more powers rather than gold. In order to really make this distinction, I decided to implement a skill tree system into the game. This ended up being a huge task that I spent a lot of time on. I created a script to manage the state of the player's skill tree throughout the game. This was a challenging task because I wanted it to be very modular so that I could continue to add lots of new skills into the game as I work on it. It also created a lot more work for the user interface development. I created a whole new menu section for the skill tree with its own user interface. And now the player can clearly see what each skill will do, how many points they have trained in it, what the max skill level is, and how much another level upgrade will cost. And I made all these little icons, borders, and buttons with Sprite. Of course, making the user interface and the skill manager is only half of the process, because after you're done with those, you actually have to make the skills work in the game. Part of what makes this so challenging is that a skill could be almost anything. You might shoot a bolt of lightning at an enemy, or cast a healing spell, or absorb some damage from the next hit, move quicker, jump, fly, teleport, anything. How could you even build a system so that it can handle all these different scenarios? What I decided to do was keep it simple. I picked 3 abilities from my skill tree and dissected each one, determining what needs to happen in the game when these abilities are activated. I felt that getting a solid foundation down for these 3 skills would give me something that was capable of handling the main scenarios that the player would experience in the game. Situation 1 is when an ability from a skill tree does something that provides a beneficial effect to the player. When a player spends souls to train in a skill, that skill is added to a list of active skills. When an event that could trigger a skill occurs, a signal is emitted inside Godot. Then the skill manager receives this signal and calls a function that loops through the active skills and activates them. Depending on the requirements of the skill being activated, a new spell component will be created and have its data set according to its needs. In this case, the player is listed as the target. The stat being boosted is their speed. The amount boosted is based off of the amount trained in the skill, and the duration is also affected by the amount trained in the skill. Situation 2 is when an ability from the skill tree inflicts an effect on an enemy. Using the same properties, the spell can make the designated enemy the target, determine which stat should be affected, and inflict the penalty on the enemy for the set duration. This one was a little bit tricky for my particular use case. I wanted the enemy to be stunned after being hit. This introduced the concept of status effects, and I had to create a whole system to manage them in the game. Situation 3 is when an ability from the skill tree shoots a projectile into the game space, which can deal damage to other objects that it runs into. I created an additional new component that would be responsible for containing the data necessary for a damage spell. Now, when a spell is cast, the activation code determines what kind of spell it's going to be. Then, if it's a damage spell, it will attach this additional component that manages the movement, direction, collision, and visual effects for that spell. I also spent some time cleaning up some of the bugs involving the movement of the player. One problem that I had with the movement of the player is that they would always turn and face to the other direction if there was only movement input along the y-axis. In my animation tree, I was using the input x-axis to set the animation direction. Anything less than 0 would return the left-facing animation, and anything greater than 0 would return the right-facing animation. But what happens when the x input axis was equal to 0? Each location on the number line can only contain one animation. This is a problem because if the player moves to the right and then straight up or down, the character will flip across the x-axis unnecessarily, which looks odd. In order to fix this, I set up some additional logic that ensures that the blend position will only be updated if the input strength is less than 0 or greater than 0. It's a small change, but it made me really happy to fix that problem that had been bothering me for a while. The next problem with the movement was the ordering of the dust particles on the screen. While moving around, the player creates these small dust particles. Some problems were occurring where they were being cut off in certain spots. This turned out to be a problem with the Y sorting and the Z index from the tile map. The origin point for my tiles was fighting with the origin point of the dust particles, and sometimes they would cut them off, creating this visual bug. If you run into this in your projects, try lowering the Z index of the ground so that it will always appear underneath everything else that's going on. Alternatively, you can adjust the origin point of tiles and sprites Y sorting. But if you have too many things happening all on the same Z index layer, this might be pretty tough to fix, and I'd recommend going with option 1. Another problem with my game was the audio. In my game jam projects, audio tends to get overlooked until the very end. Even though it's easy to overlook the audio in a game project when you're the solo developer and there are so many tasks on your plate, it is really important to spend some time working on it. I had almost no experience with managing audio within Godot, so this was long overdue. Godot has its own built-in audio management system, and you can set up some compressors, limiters, and buses to manage the volume of sounds and background music. This is something that I'll be exploring more in the future. For this update, I created a whole new battle theme. You can check out the demo for the game if you want to hear it in its entirety. If you want to keep up with me and my game development journey, be sure to subscribe so you can catch the next devlog. And if you're interested, you can try the current patch of the game on desktop on itch.io. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.